Right, I am back from Christmas, so I'm gonna enjoy a little beer, and I'm gonna have it in my glass, and we're gonna do this video. We're gonna have a good time. This is a video where we have a good time. So, hope everyone had a good Christmas, and yeah. Oh, this is getting dicey. This is getting dicey. Oh, I spilled it. Okay, restart. We're restarting the video. We're restarting the video. Restart. Hey, oh, I hope everyone had a good Christmas, as I just said, if that makes it in. And you all have some fun plans for New Year's, if that's the kind of thing you like doing. This video is just something to round off the year. I put out a call for hot takes or questions I could answer quickly, and you all delivered with some interesting, let's call them interesting questions. What I've done is I've taken 7 that cover the ground from a bit of fun to things I actually have a serious opinion on. And I've come up with some thoughts on what you sent me. Why 7? Well, it's a prime number and I like prime numbers, and 5 felt like too few and 11 felt like too many, so that's why. If you're here for one end of that serious, not serious spectrum and not the other, there are timestamps in the video as always. Feel free to jump around. With that very short intro out of the way, let's jump into it. So the first take I got sent in was making pizzas is a culinary skill like any other, so in reality, most toppings can work with a skilled enough chef. I agree with the premise here of making pizza being a skill where you get better as you practice it. A friend of mine who might be watching, in case he's watching, hi to my one Slovenian friend, it is literally one, so he will know who he is. He invited me out to try pizza once he started making his own in 2019, and it was good. He'd followed the instructions, and it was definitely nicer than any pizza we could have reasonably ordered at the time. Then a few years later, we'd fallen out of touch a bit, but he'd invited me for his birthday this year, actually, and he made pizzas again, and they were so much better. The question of toppings, though, I think most conventional toppings are conventional for a reason, and it's that they work well with the base flavor profile of a pizza. Tomato and cheese. You have boundaries within which to work. Obviously, this question is trying to bait me on the matter of pineapple on pizza, and my hot take is, I don't care. I'm not Italian. My objection to pineapple on pizza is that I can't physically consume pineapple without throwing up. It's pineapple and coconut, in case anyone was wondering, which means pina coladas are deadly for me, which is a shame. I hear they're quite nice. There's a whole song about how nice they are. Also, a lot of Southeast Asian food, which is a real shame because I feel like I would like a lot of Southeast Asian food otherwise. But yeah, I think as long as a type of food has existed, there's been people experimenting with them, and we live in a time, for good or ill, where we have access to more varieties of food than ever before. So let the pizza experiments continue. As far as I'm concerned, have fun with it, Make a pizza with a weird ingredient on it. I'll probably eat it as long as it's not pineapple or coconut. So the next hot take. Sometimes people just have to cope with 4:3 aspect ratios. Discuss. So just off the bat, I completely agree with this. Just to sort of put that out there, but I'll expand on that just a little bit. In general, I think it's the case from a preservation perspective that the original version of something should be available, and in a lot of cases, remastering into modern aspect ratios means that's not the case. So basically, again, yes, I agree with this, especially if the demand for remastering because of this sort of resistance to 4:3 leads to vandalism of the original artistic vision or the actual final piece of work. I don't want to grandstand about it. It's a personal frustration that there's this tendency towards cultural vandalism that's driven by some people's eyes apparently being offended by 4:3. I especially think of a lot of the shows I grew up with and how it's kind of difficult to share these things with some friends of mine because of this resistance, which leads us nicely into the next question, actually. Okay, so that question is, what are the best animes that normies can and should watch? I want to turn the question around a little bit and break down how I would recommend an anime to someone who's never watched one before. First, I would go for something modern. My line for that is something where the first season is in a modern aspect ratio, or has been released from 2018 onwards. Like, my first anime that wasn't on children's TV, wasn't Dragon Ball Z or whatever, was Fate Stay Night. I absolutely would not recommend that to anyone as their first anime, no matter how much affection and nostalgia I have for it, right? That's just not a good idea. It's too old and it's too weird. Second, I think one of the things that people find off-putting about anime are the conventions of the form, let's call them. So what you need is something that isn't heavy with those stereotypical elements and isn't parodying them by having them be laden throughout the story. I like Konosuba a lot, but I'm aware that it's absolutely full of the stuff that would annoy anyone who is either put off by those conventions or who won't understand that it's kind of making fun of that. Third, don't treat anime itself as a genre. There's this tendency to treat all of anime as if it's under one big umbrella. I would say, and this is what makes the question kind of impossible to answer, you need to tailor what you'd recommend to the tastes of the person, because normies have preferences too, shocking as that may be to all of us. I'll give 2 examples. I have a friend from uni who is the most powerfully English person you'll ever meet. He's from a very posh part of the country, and I couldn't see him liking any anime, except he's a massive Lord of the Rings nerd. Loves it, can't get enough of it. It was one of the 2 points of contact we had at university. The other one was liking old heavy metal. For this friend, I might consider recommending Frieren, which is modern, which doesn't lean too heavily on the conventions associated with the form. It's there, I'm not going to pretend it's not, but it's not obnoxious, and crucially, it's a good example of a story within its genre. It dances with the tropes associated with fantasy adventures. I did a video about it, by the way. I think some of you would enjoy it, and I think you should check it out. Just a subtle plug there. The second example is someone I know is watching this. My dad. Hi, Dad. I know you're watching this. My dad is a big history guy, loves it, loves talking about the intricacies of the Ottoman court. For him, and yes, Dad, this is a recommendation I'm giving you through a video, I would recommend Apothecary Diaries, which, like Frieren, is modern, doesn't lean too heavily on typical anime stuff, and is a really good story about court intrigue in a country that's supposed to be analogous to China. That's the process, and I don't think I have it in me to do a general list, but those are 2 I know will cover most of the regular viewers' interests, so go, watch them, have a good time. I'm sure you'll enjoy them. What we have next is, every character on Friends is horrible, and the show sucks because they don't suffer any consequences. That's a very, very strong statement. I'm sure we'll talk it out. So just before I get into this, I want to say that Friends isn't a show I've watched for a long time. So I'm operating on a memory that's possibly warped by the passage of time. I basically agree with the take. The show definitely hasn't aged well, and I don't just mean in the sense that the social attitudes are outdated. It's a product of its time. I mean, there are so many shows now that play with the form of a sitcom in really satisfying and interesting ways. The main issue for me is how hard it is to believe that the bubble the characters live in is one that they choose to live in, and that they'd be able to live in it without some kind of blowback, which is the crux of the take that I'm responding to. These characters basically progress to the lives they want, and I just don't feel like that makes any deal of sense, right? I think a big part of the problem with the show, from my recollection, is that it's a style of sitcom humor that's very general, and so it doesn't push very hard, but part of that is almost certainly me saying this in 2025, and I was a kid during the show's original run, so maybe I'm missing something. I'm open to it, but I broadly agree with the take. There's definitely a lack of satisfying retribution being done to these characters beyond, like, mild social embarrassment and having to get divorced a whole lot. Okay, so this one is from Blue Sky. How the war on Christmas shit has fallen more by the wayside as the media has shifted more towards war Christmas. I've just brushed my hair, and it's come out looking more messy than before. How is this possible? How is it possible for my hair to do this? Can anyone explain this to me? My take on this is that it's definitely the case that we had the war on Christmas stuff in the UK, and it isn't really a thing anymore, other than some people getting defensive about their personal traditions on the day. I think it's wrong to chalk it up to War Christmas, which it is, just in case people don't know. It's a funny way to refer to like Remembrance Sunday and the associated days and the culture that's developed around it. And it's not just that that's more prominent on its own. A big part of it is that Christmas isn't really a contentious day in the UK. Like, if you ask people about Christmas, there will be a cross-community consensus that it's good. Like my dad, hi dad, by the way, I'm about to really drop you in it. He hates Christmas. But that's because it's a day where you can't really do anything other than be at home. Not because of some opposition to Christian values or whatever. Although I'm sure he'll say something about that in the comments if he feels like it. It's hard to create a panic about something no one is contesting. As far as confected bullshit from the right-wing press went, it was easy to ignore, so it faded. That fading coincided with World War II falling out of living memory, which means that there is, sadly in my opinion, a drive to make Remembrance a sort of secular nationalist ritual holiday, complete with absurd idolatry. That's why there are accounts now that track how poppy-obsessed the UK is getting. It's also polarizing in a way that works in the current media environment. So it's the way we choose to remember war, the loss of war, the people who died, and so on is important. It might be largely symbolic, but that symbolism shapes our society, so people like me are more willing to wade in and say that the excessive poppy nonsense and the demand that people bow at a particular angle or whatever is not in the spirit of remembrance. It is grotesque and shameful, so I think it's a confluence of things combined with the fact that Britain has such a secular public sphere. And I think we take it for granted in some ways, that Christmas doesn't even have a particularly religious connotation here. That's not to say that no one celebrates it as a religious festival. Of course, people do. But for the overwhelming majority of the country, it's a nice day off to spend with the family. And, you know, not to be spicy about it, but it probably isn't even Jesus' birthday. We're just kind of picking a day and saying it is, you know. That's it. I think it's a few things happening at once instead of just War Christmas's prominence. I think that's kind of a coincidence that has occurred as we've shifted into a different media environment, a more confrontational media environment. So this one is going to be a bit contentious. Do progressive Greens run into becoming the very thing they despised with the formation of your party? Now, I had to trim this question a little bit because it wasn't the best written question I got sent in. No offense to the person who wrote in. So I've kind of picked this up and assumed it's a request for general commentary on the dynamic that's emerging between these two parties. And so that's what I'm going to try my best to do here. It's important to set the stage a little before I dive into this one. The Green Party has elected Zach Polanski as its leader and appears to be enjoying record polling numbers. Zach Polanski has pitched himself as an eco-socialist / eco-populist, which is fine. I don't really take issue with any of that, and neither do the British public if the polls are to be believed. Meanwhile, a new left party has taken form with Your Party as the name, which is objectively an awful name and makes it hard to talk about them, actually. But I named my YouTube channel after a video game, so, you know, can I really judge? Your Party has adopted a collective leadership model. It's adopted various interesting things that are not strictly within the remit of this hot take, but it has naturally attracted the attention of some Green supporters who have behaved in interesting ways. I'm not a member of either party, and I'm not super interested in either for different reasons. That is despite the cascading assumptions that certain Green supporters have made about me for reasons we can only speculate on, and maybe we will speculate on in a future video. I don't know. I'm feeling a little bit, you know, agitated by it. And I'm not going to get too deep into it because the schism at play here could really be its own video as well. But essentially, the Greens have been very firm in their support, very hard in their support of Polanski, and have been trying to pitch the Greens led by him as the only game in town. And this seems to have produced an incredibly brittle online contingent of Green supporters who have largely taken to constantly moving the goalposts as it relates to your party, particularly on certain issues. And I'm going to say it, they are acting entitled to everyone getting out of their way, giving it out but not really being able to take it, and that concerns me. Because whether you like the Greens or not, they are the current premier left-of-centre electoral vehicle in the minds of a lot of people, and therefore they will need to be scrutinised. I've seen some really bad reactions to people politely declining to join the Greens. I will also say I've seen some Your Party people react very poorly to the Greens' prominence at the moment. Though, for me, the sense I get is, if that scrutiny gets applied, the Greens may not react super well to it, and I'm not talking about, the right-wing press making up some nonsense about Zach Polanski or talking about, the hypnotits, the titnosis thing. I mean thoughtful, serious, even-handed examinations of the party and its leadership. As a political movement of the left, you do need to be able to take left critique. Otherwise, you're just engaging in sparkling liberalism. And I think the expectation has been that your party has to take all scrutiny, fair or not, but that the Greens must be protected from it no matter how well-founded that criticism is because of tactical reasons. Stop me if that sounds kind of familiar, and that's at the core of this issue, really. In both parties now, the bulk of the membership have the same basic political lineage. They exist downstream of the 2015-2019, left leadership experiment in Labour, let's call it. It's interesting what parts of it have been carried over and what parts of it have been rejected by both and what they're doing differently. I think we'll learn a lot, not just about the current political figures involved, but about what the real limitations were of that 2015 to 2019 project. To get back to the question, or take, I suppose, there's always a danger on the first past the post that you adopt the character of the main party of the left of centre, where you get demanding and entitled. That actually was one of the flaws with that political project within Labour, was it often had this attitude embedded in it, and that meant it wasn't willing to argue for and would kind of dither in getting to the positions it was obvious they would have to adopt eventually. There's always risk, there's always danger, and the way to inoculate yourself against it is to embrace honest critique and to constantly work to improve your movement and what it's doing. Make it more robust. Go out and do the small things. And ultimately, that's my real wish for both parties. Mind your own respective business and focus on yourselves. It'll result in a better outcome for both parties and might ease the tensions to the point that we can get to the obvious endpoint of this without a lot of kicking and screaming. And that obvious endpoint will be some kind of agreement between the two parties. I think that's kind of obviously where this is going. I also just think that maybe an acknowledgement of the basic fact that once people have decided they don't like something, you can't really force them to do the thing they're loudly declaring they don't like. You can't force them to be interested in it. You can't force them to engage fairly with it. I think if people accepted that and minded their own business, things would be better for both sides of that particular divide. That's just me. I'm not on any particular side. I don't have any particularly strong feelings towards either. Take it for what it's worth, The last question. Should Corbyn retire? That's gonna be oh, that one's gonna get me in some trouble. Let's see. Alright, let's do it. This is kind of related to the last take. We're talking about a 76-year-old politician who I think should be focusing on his constituency and be pleased at the fact that he doesn't need to be at the centre of things anymore. Instead, what we got was him inserting himself with a team of people who I don't think had the best of intentions, into something where he needed to relax, right? He's injected himself into something where he needed to relax. He needed to take it easy. So that's a yes in terms of frontline politics. He should focus on what he was always good at, which was being an annoying guy in Parliament who winds up melts and campaigns for way too many causes. Honestly, you do wonder where the guy finds the energy. It's something that should be studied. Like, we could solve the climate crisis, like, by analysing Jeremy Corbyn. Should he retire from being an MP? I don't know. On the one hand, I think people should get to have a long and luxurious retirement. And I think without a regular turnover in MPs, we stagnate. On the other hand, given the effort Labour put into trying to oust him at the last election, retirement does feel like letting those guys win. And he is still comfortably like one of the best MPs in Parliament. Though that is clearing a very low bar. I'm not pretending like, oh, we have such a high calibre of MP. For me, I don't know if it's the case that he doesn't have more to offer as a constituency MP. But he should certainly be away from the front lines now. One good thing about the collective leadership model that your party adopted is it's a good way to do that without having to like confront him in a leadership election probably against, if we're being honest, Zara Sultana, who I have my own reservations about. Again, +1 for the collective leadership, because my reservations don't matter because they're not going to be a leader, right? Essentially, it's up to him, and I would think that after the trouble that your party's founding has been for him, and the fact that his faction came out having lost basically every single vote that mattered, I would personally be considering it. There's more to life, and I think it's an act of kindness sometimes to say to someone that they should go enjoy that part of life, even if it's hard and even if it feels like we're sacrificing a symbolic victory. So yeah, that's my pitch, Jeremy, if you're watching. Obviously, Jeremy Corbyn's the kind of person who watches my videos and would watch one of my videos to the end. Go enjoy yourself and celebrate the fact that there are centres of the British left that can manage themselves now. There's a generation of us just ready to go do that, you know, Jeremy, who clearly watches the videos. I'm sure this message will reach its intended target. I promise you, you will enjoy retirement. All of us should enjoy retirement. You advocate so much for people to be able to have a nice retirement. Go have one yourself. All right, everyone, with that, that is the last of the hot takes. Cheers. I hope everyone has had a wonderful Christmas, as I said at the start, and I hope you all have excellent New Year's, and I hope you all have very successful 2026s. I don't really have anything to add. Cheers, everyone. All right. Okay, so for those of you who have made it to the end, you get to look at this picture of my family's cat trying to put on my rucksack when I was visiting in Reading. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, if you're new, I don't think this will attract many new viewers, but if it does, and you happen to have enjoyed this, why not drop a like? Why not subscribe? You know, why not tell me about what you think of some of the takes I have? Have fun with it. Remember, none of this is super serious. None of this is intended to be super serious, super thoughtful. It's just a bit of fun. No need to sort of get wound up by it. But feel free to let me know what you think. Yeah, that's pretty much that. Oh, right, patrons and members. Right, I need to thank the patrons and members. Thank you for sticking with me for another year of this. It's been a bit of a complicated year. Let's put it that way. I've had a pretty rough year. 2025 was a bad year for me on a personal level, but a good year for me in other ways. So, you know, it's a land of contrast, folks. But I need to thank the top tier patrons: Drone Riff, Kazi Shider, Liron, Jar Jar Muba, and Carolyn. Thank you to them. And I need to thank our YouTube members: Nadir Jiwa, Katie Marshall, Roger Zugi, Ben Johnson. Thank you to them. This has been a lot of fun. I don't know if we'll make this a regular thing or if it'll be an occasional thing, but I had a good time with this. I hope you all had a good time with this, and I hope, you all have a great 2026, and I have a great 2026, and also be on the lookout, because the first video of 2026 may come sooner than you think. All right, everyone, take it easy. Peace.